In the art world, commercial work is often perceived as hindering the creative mind. For Melissa, working with clients is just another challenging way to hone her skills. Her willingness to take on these challenges has directly contributed to her success as an illustrator and her progression as an artist.
I know when I went to school for art, illustration was sort of looked at as this other thing that we weren't supposed to do. So to me, one of the main differences is when you are making fine art, you're making an object, whether it's a painting or a sculpture. It's one of a kind, it's one thing that expresses something from the artist's point of view, whereas illustration is more based in making an image that may be used different ways, reproduced different ways, whether it's a personal illustration or illustration for expressing a client's needs. Illustration, you're thinking about not as much the media, but the final image and what you're going to do with that. So for instance, there's so many different illustration markets, whether it's greeting cards or surface pattern illustration for stationery and fabric and things like that, or packaging illustration or editorial illustration in a magazine. There's a lot of different markets, and the visual communication aspect is very much the same as it would be in fine art, but it does have a very different role. I've developed my own style in a stronger way, so people are coming to me when my style fits what they want to do and when it's a subject matter that's kind of in my wheelhouse. I'll get hired to paint a bird, or get hired to draw the lakeshore with trash on it, or I just never know. I've done things like CD covers. I've done coffee packaging several times for a company up in Michigan. They do specialty roast coffees, and so there's kind of a story behind every coffee. For example, they have a series of woman-grown coffees that they release each year. So I actually get to do a little bit of research to find out, learn a little bit about the area that the coffee is from. And with my focus on nature, I'll kind of look into, okay, what plants grow there? What's the national flower? What kind of things are done locally as far as things like fabric patterns or traditional motifs, and it's fun to incorporate those into packaging design. And then in October of this past year, I completed a 70 by 16 foot mural in the town of Highland. One of 3 artists commissioned to do a public mural on Jewett Street in Highland by the town. And that's been great too. I had someone emailing me that there were kids taking their senior pictures in front of it and things like that. So it's fun. It's fun to watch your work come to life and see people interact with it. It was very physical. It was a lot of work, and I had some help a couple of days, but I think I calculated it was over 70 man hours to get this thing painted. But it's funny, it had actually started, my idea started with one of the patterns I was working on. I was doing sort of a honeycomb with honeybees and flowers, and realized that would adapt very well to that sort of long, narrow format, because it's a long building wall, so very horizontal in format. And sent in an application with my drawing and was selected, and had 2 weeks to climb about on ladders and scaffoldings and paint the things. So I used a grid system to translate, my little 17-inch drawing to that big wall, and it was a learning experience. I don't know, sometimes I like a challenge. I said, well, I've never done something like this before. I'm gonna throw my hat in the ring and see what happens. Well, my main subject matter is nature. I grew up doing a lot of hiking and camping and things with my parents, and I always had an appreciation for it, but honestly, moving to Valparaiso and being so close to the Indiana Dunes got me reconnected with that. I've gotten to know a lot of biologists in the area, spent a lot of time at the Dune State Park and hiking and just educating myself about the environment here. It's such an interesting area. Sometimes I look at things in sort of a metaphorical way. I'm fascinated with cicadas. They live, 17 years of their life underground as these little, blind nymphs, and then they crawl out and have this brief, glorious life as this beautiful winged insect that sort of flies around and mates and dies in a very short period of time. And so it's just sort of this beautiful metaphor for being a late bloomer in a way, I guess. So I'm just always seeing connections like that between different organisms and between human experiences and what goes on in nature. Starting to look at the whole ecosystem and how all those things are connected is incredibly fertile for creative ideas. So I never run out of ideas. The problem is more having time to execute them all. Even though I was trained as an oil painter and printmaker, I mostly these days work in pen and ink and watercolor. And then I take things into the computer, but I've had people ask me to teach watercolor and I'm always hesitant to do it because I feel like I don't really use it right. I've taken a couple of classes, but I just kind of use whatever media is at hand for the effect that I need to create. So, most of my finished work, and especially my gallery work, is definitely mixed media, everything from collage to acrylic and pencil and colored pencil. It just depends on what the effect I want to create is going to be and what the subject matter is. Because I worked as a graphic designer for a long time, illustration was a way to sort of bring together my skills as a fine artist and then working commercially as a designer. So I get to put a little more of me into the work, but I'm still hopefully making a living at it. So I'm really lucky that my entire career has had some ties to the arts somewhere. It's been something I have always done and always been interested in, and I'm really grateful that I've gotten to make that the center of my life and my work. So yeah, it's not just a hobby for me, it's what I get up in the morning for.
You can find more of Melissa's work on her website, melissawashburn.com.